I'd say I'm an athletic pedestrian. I walk with strong, quick strides and like to get my heart rate up but without sweating. I time myself, beating crosswalks just before they turn red, playing little games of mapping the quickest maneuvering paths ahead in my head, but all the while watching for any reckless drivers. If I can't be sure my move will be 100% safe, I don't take the risk. I'm not dangerous. Now sometimes there are weird intersections of multiple curving streets that create a mega intersection that have multiple crosswalks in even the one general direction you want to go. There is a particular one where following the multiple crosswalks is a little inconvenient if you have no traffic coming towards you, unless you just cross the hypotenuse of the triangle instead and skip 3 crosswalks in the process. Well, 4 of us pedestrians were doing just that at this juncture, even a grandma. But the traffic was totally clear. The cross traffic is also normally very visible from far enough away, at least 100 meters, that one could easily judge if your crossing would make it in time before a turning vehicle approached. But as soon as we were skipping into the region of the last crosswalk by shortcutting it, I saw in the distance 2 minivans following each other closely, turning in further up onto the cross traffic towards us. There was a 50-meter away side street which they were now coming from. It was obvious they were speeding up and going to turn into our path, and it was as if they wanted to. They didn't look like they were slowing, but the first minivan did end up signaling, though nearly into the turn no less, and Suit Guy, half the crossing shortcut ahead of me, made it behind that first van, while Grandma changed directions and was no longer in danger. I had already stopped a quarter way into the last crossing, letting the first van go and then waiting for a definitive direction of the second van, as I wasn't going to cross in time if it was going to turn in. The second minivan, sure enough, swerved sharply to turn into our street, so much so that it was obvious if it didn't slow, it would clip the heels of Suit Guy. Despite having his white headphones plugged in both ears, he was paying attention but held his ground as a pedestrian by not speeding up. But at the point when impact was certainly imminent, he suddenly scooted his legs ahead of his body, as if he were toppling backwards to save his legs first, then body out of the way. Minivan number 2, also in the same instant, only slowed at the last millisecond enough to speed up again as soon as Suit Guy cleared. However, with an egotistical disregard for his safety, it was the kind of close call that felt wrong to be this driver. Suit Guy was certainly upset and swung his head around, in half shock and half resolve, shooting a piercing look behind at the escaping minivan. Quite silly after rushing into the turn. Minivan number 2 because it had to stop at the end of a long queue of cars that filled up half of the street due to the red light. So what was all the rush for? I crossed cautiously and then watched to see how would Suit Guy handle this injustice and danger to his life. He sped up alongside the sidewalk like the predator seeing the opportunity of the queue of stopped cars. Minivan number 2 was vulnerably at the end of it. I watched intently. Suit Guy popped one of his earphones out, as if ready to shout and engage in an argument. I was ready to watch. I was thinking the driver needed to hear what Suit Guy was going to say. Then he looked over to the driver and then he lost his guts. He only raised a finger half-heartedly into the air, half directing it toward the driver, half eyeing him, muttering inaudible syllables, none of which had even seemed to have been seen by the driver. And then he just sauntered on. What the... I would have given the driver a piece of my mind. I would have walked right up to the driver's window and shoved my phone right in front of his face and taken his photo and taken one of his license plate. For as long as the light was red and minivan number 2 was stuck, I would have made the driver uncomfortable and have audio recorded his reaction with my phone to my loud questioning and argued with him as to how he shouldn't be allowed to even have a license. I would certainly have made a scene. If he apologized, I might be satisfied. But if he fought back, I would have called the cops and made a point and example of him. We just can't let these kinds of native drivers escape without some shame. Though truth be told, on the flip side, I felt it was shame on the Suit Guy. I just couldn't believe he was chicken shit in the end. It was a nondescript minivan. The driver did not look intimidating. It didn't look to me that Suit Guy even carefully look in at the driver's side. It was more like Suit Guy felt inconvenienced by the whole thing, but this was foreign to me coming from a big city myself. Suit Guy didn't even display his displeasure in view of the driver. It was kind of off to the side. I and a few random bystanders may have been the only witnesses to commiserate with him, but I felt it was in his right to make an issue of it, and I would have flaunted it. Ah, the culture shock. I guess you know how that saying goes. No guts, no glory.